Yo, what's going on, you guys? Rasati here in Singapore, and obviously you're back here with me on the Night Owl podcast. Really grateful to have you guys listening from all over the world. And yes, my audience is slowly growing, and I am so proud because, let's face it, I was doing this for me and not for anybody else, but I'm glad you guys are finding some value in the content itself. So here I am today, kind of juiced up a little bit. It's in the morning this time. I'm actually doing the recording in the morning because I decided to go to sleep really late and I could not function at the time, so I didn't have the energy to be able to do the podcast episode at night like I wanted to. But this works as well because, as you know, I get inspiration from all kinds of things, and today it was a YouTube video about a man named John Wottle. Now, John Wottle was the 1972 gold medalist in the Summer Olympics in Munich for the 800-meter run. But the odd thing, I don't even know if you want to call it odd, the ironic thing is he had really bad tendonitis in his knee, so he wasn't able to train the way he wanted to before the Olympics came around. And when he started out dead last. So I want to talk to you a little bit about strategy, mostly because this video made me really think about how people plan to win, right? Most people have a plan in their mind. Most people don't want to change as they go along. They really think that this plan, if you execute it perfectly, which what actually is executed perfectly ever, if you execute it perfectly according to plan, that you're going to get to where you need to be. But there are so many obstacles along the way. So for instance, right, Wottle actually was not able to train the way he wanted to. And maybe that was a gift in and of itself. We have no idea. So many variables to think about, but I want to break it down for you. He is known for running with a golf cap on. Most people do not wear anything that could hinder their aerodynamics as they run. So it's normally short shorts or maybe something form-fitting. Back in the 70s, I don't think they thought really about Lycra or spandex or any of those things. So something form-fitting, close to the body, so it doesn't impede the way your arms move as you pump and run. Most people do not wear a cap, mostly because they don't want the air resistance or any of that. So he was comfortable. He was very well known for this cap thing that he did, wearing a golf cap, running the 800-meter sprint. Can you call it a sprint? I don't know. It's middle distance, right? So the 800-meter race. So he started off dead last, mostly because I think it was because of his knees. So coming in last for the first half of the race, he was worried. He said that he was worried. He could see that there was a significant distance between him and the last person in the race, the one before him, and he wasn't sure how he was going to close the gap. And of course, he's worried about his knees as well. So at some point, though, he continued to, pick up the pace a little bit, and he started closing the gap between him and this last person. And there was a moment where he realized he wasn't that far behind. He still had plenty of time to go because we hadn't even finished the first lap yet. And so he started cutting to the inside to kind of pass through the pack. He felt like once he caught up with the pack, he felt really good about where he was and what he was doing. So his confidence picked up a little bit. And at that point, I don't know if other people have noticed, but in a long race like that, most times they tell you not to put on too much of a burst of speed in the beginning because you're going to be worn out by the end of the race. By the second half of the second lap, you're going to be panting a little bit. You're going to be, working your energy as much as you can. So it may have worked out perfectly for him. He started off dead last. He ran his race. He got to about, just before the beginning of the second lap or just before the second lap, and he was able to catch up to the pack. And so the rest of it was just passing the next person, passing the next person, passing the next person. And because the pack was pretty compact, there wasn't a lot of distance between each of the other runners, he was able to just pass and pass and pass and pass. There was a moment where he was in the top three, and the young man in the lead at the time was a young Caucasian, and he seemed to be, confident and doing his thing. And all of a sudden he seemed to trip just as they were getting towards the finish line. I don't know about you. I am a sprinter. I like the 100 and the 50 because those are short races and I don't do distance very well. My brothers, on the other hand, are cross-country runners. So when I was training for the 100-meter dash or the 50-yard dash, what I didn't realize I was doing was, as soon as I started seeing the finish line, I would start slowing up. And if you've been putting up a really fast pace up until just before the finish line, sometimes when you slow up, it kind of changes your balance and you tend to trip or tend to really slow down a lot more than you anticipated. But that's the worst possible strategy. And I don't know what the young man's strategy was, the one who was in the lead, but it seemed like he slowed up a little bit. It changed his gait and he tripped just as he was about to cross the finish line. So he did not finish first, he did not finish second, he finished third instead. And so Wottle was able to gain the lead. He picked up speed right at the last minute to be able to beat the last couple of people. It worked, right? Gold medalist for the 1972 Munich Summer Olympics. But like I said, a lot of life is about strategy. We have this plan in our heads, and a lot of us are depending on the plan to go off without a hitch. We're depending on the fact that, if I do this and then this will happen and then I do that and then this will happen, and there's like a specific strategy that we really want to keep to. But a lot of life is about curveballs. A lot of life is about hidden speed bumps and sudden detours and GPS that doesn't give you the right signal, whatever the case may be. But in all of that chaos, how well do you manage the stress? How well do you manage the change? And this is why I teach emotional intelligence, because, yeah, sure, we have a plan in mind, but are you prepared for any deviation? Are you prepared for the variables to adjust themselves along the way? Because everything is connected. Now, I'm not trying to get you all super anxious and worried about the future with every possible, probability that might happen or might not happen. But what I am trying to tell you is, yes, please have a plan, but be ready in the event of any changes. Be ready to adjust the plan. You don't have to adjust the goal, but do adjust the plan. It's very, very difficult to sail through life if you're only prepared for a specific outcome or a specific route. I don't know about you, there have been so many times where I get on a bus getting ready to go somewhere and I wasn't paying attention. I went a couple of stops too far and now I don't know how to get back to where I'm going. Back in the day, I would have probably stopped and broken down and had a conniption. But nowadays it's almost like, okay, you know what? I passed where I was supposed to be, which means I was on the right route. Now I got to just turn around and figure out how much further I need to go backwards to be able to get to where I needed to be. Or maybe, just maybe, I am in a rush and I'm waiting for the bus and the bus doesn't come, but there's another bus that kind of goes along the same route, but it's going to change my my journey a little bit. So if I switch gears and change the route that I'm taking, as in take a different bus than I originally planned, am I prepared to pay a little bit more attention and get to where I need to go? Let's say that I'm on the bus and I was in plenty of time, but for some reason there was 3 wheelchairs that got on the bus, and so it slowed down the process and the anticipated arrival time has been adjusted for me. So now I'm worried about being late. I always have the option to stop and get a cab from wherever I'm going. If I don't have the money, that's a different problem, but at least I have the option. I can switch gears, I can adjust, I can do something different. Let's put it in a different context, shall we? How about cooking, you guys? How many times have you picked a recipe based on the fact that you have all the ingredients in the house? But then when you start getting ready to cook, you realize that maybe some of the ingredients aren't within their expiration date, or maybe you don't have enough of the ingredient to be able to properly execute the recipe. And how many of you guys stop the recipe and throw everything out, or kind of adjust along the way and see if you can manage without all of the recipe's stated ingredient amounts? How many of us have kind of just malabufied, just kind of like winged it a little bit just to get to that end result? Because we don't want to stop. We don't want to stop and throw the whole thing out. We want to actually get to the end result. We want to finish whatever it is that we started. And sometimes those are some of the best recipes because, yeah, it turns out great, but chances are you can't duplicate it because you don't know what you had to adjust in the first place. It's kind of like George's Marvelous Medicine. He threw in a bunch of stuff. It sounded good. It smelled good. It was making some weird noises, and hey, it did what it needed to do, but he couldn't replicate that to save his life again. So the point being that all of us have a strategy. Whatever the strategy may be, maybe it gets you to where you need to be. Maybe, it's perfectly planned and it goes off without hitch. But more often than not, something's going to go wrong. Something's going to pop up that you did not anticipate, or something's going to change midway and you're going to have to manage the change. And more than anything else, I want you to be equipped enough to manage the change without having to break down and, pitch a fit and throw a tantrum and then stall the entire process based on time at that point. I would rather you be able to stop, evaluate. I know you're probably angry as hell, probably frustrated. You probably want to take a break for a second, but when you get your act together, when you get control of your emotions, right? I need you to be able to think clearly about what you can and can't control. I need you to be able to understand what you can ask for help on and who you can ask for help with, and keep moving forward, because nothing is set in stone. Change is the only thing you can count on. Even then, you don't know when you can count on it. So I realize that as much as I'd like to say that, you know what, I did a podcast episode every day for all of my life or whatever, or I put in content on YouTube or on Instagram, I was able to do thumbnails to perfection. Y'all already know the algorithm is going to change, and what people respond to is going to change, because suddenly it becomes trendy and everyone's doing it and it's not catching people's attention anymore. Change is the only thing that we can depend on. Like I said, we don't even know when we can depend on it. Recently, we've had a lot of changes on the algorithm in Instagram. We have a lot more people that are liking posts, but they're not commenting, they're not sharing. There's not a lot of engagement. We're trying to figure out how we can get people's engagement again. And what I'm finding out is if I don't tell people to engage, they're not going to engage, as if I need to instruct them every time. But hey, that's what I got to do. That's what I got to do for now. Eventually, I'm going to have to change again. Back in the day when I wrote something that was unique or useful or touching or deep, people were happy to write down and say, hey, you know what, that worked. Now we get emoji comments. We get things that say, oh my God, that's great. Oh my God, that's great. It's like all generic. And I know there are bots out there that do that shit too. So bottom line is, get ready for change. And honestly, a sign of great mental health is how quickly you're able to respond to change, and how you are able to not let things affect you so much, because you know that's part of the game. That's just part of the journey. And the quicker you're able to respond, the quicker you're able to accept what is, the simpler your life gets. And the simpler your life is, oh my God, the more peace you experience, the more joy you experience. There's more time for you to enjoy things rather than to fight what's going on or what's about to happen. I know, you guys, we like what we like, and that's okay. But sometimes we got to be ready to change as well. And change isn't always bad. Change can be good too. It really depends on how you see things. So if you have any questions, comments, drop them in the comment box below. I would love to hear from you guys. But in the meantime, Wottle, 1972 Summer Olympics in Munich. Tendonitis in both knees, started off dead last. I mean, like really all the way back. Running with a cap of all things, was able to beat everyone and come in first. And man, what a story, right? Which means there's a chance for you too. Don't give up hope. Keep going. I'll catch y'all later. Bye.